We're going to experiment today, and I got some new birch panels. They're cradle board, so they have a frame on the back. I think they'll be really easy to hang. So I also got another new supply for my supply addiction, which is this QoR Watercolor Ground. And so I'm going to try painting this onto these panels, and then we'll try painting on it eventually as well. So the instructions for this watercolor ground say that you have to apply 2 to 3 layers and let them dry to 24 to 72 hours in between. So right now I'm just going to apply my first layer. Well, actually it doesn't actually say if it'll have to dry 24 hours in between. Well, I'm going to apply one layer and then I'll probably get busy and not get back to it for a day, so we'll let it dry then. So I just got this week, brand new container that I've never even opened. I have no idea what I'm doing. We're going to explore, experiment, and find out together. Come on, I didn't want to splatter that everywhere, but of course I did. So I have a crappy brush. I think I got this at the dollar store. I love the dollar store for cheapo supplies. I talk about that actually in a card tutorial that I recorded that I haven't published anywhere yet. Maybe someday. I set this out of the way so I can work on this one. Evidently this is one I picked to do first. So let's see, I'm going to try to get a fairly even coat. I'm not sure. I don't think I need to get it on the sides because I'm not going to try to paint on the sides. But I am getting it on the sides. Hopefully this washes up with water. I think it says back on the instructions, but I don't remember. So yes, already I can see why I'm going to need to put more than one layer down, because it won't be even otherwise. Okay, there we go. All right, so panel 1, panel 2, or rather panel 1, panel 2. And now I guess I'm gonna let this dry. So this second one obviously looks a heck of a lot better than that first one. It's a lot more even. So when I do this again for the second coat, I will probably try to put more on this one, try to even it out. I might go the opposite direction so that if I have brush strokes, maybe they won't be as obvious and have thin patches. This one I'm a lot happier with, like I said. That second attempt at things seems to often go a lot better. So, time to let it dry. Okay, we're back after letting our boards dry for about 24 hours. Maybe not quite that long, but pretty close. And I'm not super happy with the brush marks that I have in this. They are pretty uneven from the brush I used yesterday with the different individual bristles. It's got more of a texture to it because of that as well. So I grabbed a different brush today. A foam brush is what I'm going to try and see if that gives me a better result. I'm not super worried about it because I've never done this before, so I know that there's going to be differences and things that I'll want to change up later on when I do it for real. Well, I mean, I guess this is for real. Oops, I wanted to go the opposite direction this time. I kind of shook this up before I got started, or I tried to. I'm not sure that I needed to or that I should have done that. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the sides of this either. So that's definitely something I'm having a little more problems with the sponge brush. It wants to go leak on the side a lot more. I don't know how thick I need to get this, so it's sticking a lot this time. All right, I got a pretty good thick layer on this smaller board here. I'm gonna wipe my excess from the brush back into the jar so we don't waste it. And then I'm gonna smooth this one out again, I think. Try to. We'll see how well it goes. Okay. To the edge a little bit. Make sure it doesn't have too much thick paint. Okay. So there's that finished with our watercolor ground. Now I'm gonna go rinse out my brush so this stuff doesn't dry in it. And we'll try painting on it next after it dries for another day. All right, we're back with our dried second layer of watercolor ground on our panel here. This is just the 5x7 panel, not the 8x8. I've never worked with this before, so I'm not really sure what to expect with it. So we're gonna try something on this one. So final verdict on the painting process of putting this watercolor ground on here. It was pretty difficult to get it smooth. It's not smooth at all. Hopefully you can see kind of some of that on the video here. Try to show it at some different angles. So I have some lines going vertically and horizontally from the two different brush strokes that I used. So it kind of gave it a cross-hatching pattern. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Obviously I use cold pressed watercolor paper and that has a texture, so I'm hoping that it'll work well, but I really have no idea what I'm doing with this. And it looks like I got some cat hair in it. That is the dangers of not keeping your cats out of your studio consistently. Well, and earlier when I tried to record this video, they came in and meowed on screen anyway. So we have our 2 layers of the watercolor ground on here. You know, it doesn't look too bad on the sides. I'm actually happier. Well, it's a little messy there, I guess, but overall it's not bad. So it's not rough. It's very matte to the touch. If I tap my fingernail in it, it seems to dent it a little bit. So you'll want to be really careful with this. It seems like once you get this on here, you'll want to store it carefully or protect it somehow, I think, or maybe paint it, you know, fairly quickly after you get that watercolor ground on there. So I'm going to do a palette knife painting on it. First off, because it's easy and fast and we'll see some sort of results pretty quickly with that. And it'll give me a feel for that. It's something I do really regularly in my practice, and it's how I get a lot of my watercolor abstracts, so I'm really familiar with that technique. It'll be interesting to see how much the paint moves on this. I have no idea what to expect. I am going to use a couple of colors that I use frequently that I know look good together and play nice together because I don't want to ruin my first attempt at this. The good thing is I suspect with that watercolor ground, if I really hate the result, I could probably paint over it again with the watercolor ground or try to wash it off and then paint over it again. So that might be something I can try as well. We know we might do some different experiments with this stuff. So I have my palette knife here. I have Quinacridone Gold Deep on it from American Journey and Ultramarine Blue from Sennelier. So pretty much any orange or yellowish color and blue look good together in my opinion. I love them. They make great neutrals when they mix. So I'm just going to try this out. So I'm going to grab some water here. I have a big Hake brush that I'm going to use to apply the water to this. I'm hoping that it's waterproof and permanent. I really think it's supposed to be. Let's see. Well, obviously it's not absorbing the water really much at all. It's puddling quite a bit on there. It's not very consistent. Let's see, I don't think it's coming off on my brush, so that's a good sign, I think. I think it's supposed to be pretty permanent on the paper, I think. I think it's supposed to be an absorbent ground. So let's see. Put that on screen here so you can watch what I'm doing. I'm just going to swipe this in a diagonal and we'll see what we get. Okay, that does not move at all. The palette knife scraped it a little bit, and that was definitely very obvious on this in a way that it's not always on the papers. Having difficulties getting some of that, all that pigment off of my knife here. Yeah, so that's, I don't know what's going on here. Let's spritz it Well, so it's moving in those grooves where my brush lines are from applying that pigment, so that's kind of interesting. It is actually moving more than I gave it credit for in the beginning, I think. I might spritz it, see what happens, tilt it. Ooh, there it goes. Let that run. So yeah, that was interesting. So the top layer of brush lines, I think, are really moving that pigment, which that could do some really interesting things in an abstract. I'm kind of excited about that right now, what I'm seeing happening. On my 8x8, I might try just a regular brush painting with it and see how that affects the feel of painting. I do think this would be really tricky to judge, you know, your layers of water and pigment and the rate at which it's drying and stuff like that. So that is just moving to the edge of this board like nobody's business. Look at that here in this section. Wow. Interesting. So yeah, we got some different angles going on, some different things. Okay, so cool, weird, not what I expected. Oh my gosh, look at that. They're like turning into little trees up here. That's so fun. Okay, this is a cool experiment. I'm happy with it now. Doesn't take much, does it, to impress me? Oh, that's cool. That's fun. Huh, how interesting. Again, if I tried a different method of applying the watercolor ground and didn't have that same texture, it would probably do different things. So that blue is a granulating blue, but you don't really get that with this watercolor ground process. Huh, how interesting. Can you see those? They're so cool. All right, I can tell by how shiny it is, you know, only the paint's really wet right now. Leaving it like that would probably move the pigment down towards the bottom some. I'm gonna leave it flat and we'll see what happens. We'll come back to this and I'll show you the final result after this is completely dry. So we're back to see the final product of our watercolor ground on panel board. So this is what the final thing looks like. You can see with the light shining on it, a little bit of some shininess here. I think that's probably from the binder and the pigment, the gum arabic, that is maybe a little thicker there because the pigment is pretty thick there. So it's still a little shiny, but this has dried completely for about 24 hours. And overall, I think the effect is really cool. I like some of the interesting things the paint did on its own with these grooves from my paintbrush when I applied the watercolor ground. This part in particular up here stayed really cool looking. Let me see if I can manage to zoom in on that without losing focus to show you those cool little shapes. I'm not sure. They remind me of trees, like spindly branches on bare trees, or possibly a little bit like frost. So I think that effect's really cool. Overall, I would say composition is not super strong in this one, especially since my favorite part of the picture is up here near the top, and that's like almost coming off of the board. I would have preferred if I could have just scooched this down a little bit, which obviously with this being on a board and not a piece of paper, which I can adjust in a mat, it's not something I can change now. So kind of mixed. Overall, I think it turned out pretty great for a first try. So this was an interesting experiment. I have an 8x8 panel that I might try painting on soon too. I might actually use a brush with that one and see how that goes. And this is definitely something that I will keep on hand and use more often and try some of the other things with and see what I can get with it. So if you have a supply addiction like me and want to try something out, try the watercolor ground.